Hello and welcome to Monday Mornings, Useful Idiots Monday Mornings, where we talk about the Sunday morning news shows that we watch so that you do not have to. I'm Katie Halper.
And I'm Aaron Maté. Good morning, Katie.
Good morning. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that we are doing a call-in right after this where we take your questions and comments. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't encourage you to like the stream and subscribe to both youtube.com/usefulidiots and usefulidiots.substack.com. So, yeah, basically those are all the announcements I have. Do you have any announcements, Aaron?
I have no morning announcements. No.
All right.
No.
Cool. So how was your weekend?
Good weekend. We both did this event organized by Randy Credico in New York City for the defense of Julian Assange, who right now is facing an intensified threat of extradition that was just approved by the British Home Secretary. So we rallied to support Julian. And that's what all of us around the world who care about, humanity should be doing, because this is a fight not just for a free press, not just for Julian Assange's life, but really for humanity.
Yes.
Because the worst of our humanity is trying to silence our best.
Right. Yeah, so, the worst. I like that. The worst of our humanity is trying to silence the best of our humanity. And yeah, they are trying to slowly, a lot of people think this, trying to slowly kill him.
Mm-hmm.
It's really awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, it was fun. Even though it was
fun?
It was interesting. It was an interesting
experience. Yeah, it was interesting.
It was interesting, yeah. Gabriel Shipton and John Shipton, Julian Assange's brother and father, were there in the audience. So
yeah. And that was great to be in their presence.
Yeah.
The Assange family has sacrificed so much, and so to be in their presence is truly an honor. And so thanks to them and all that they do. Yeah.
And then, Aaron, you were the star of a hit piece, but I guess we can get to that later on and the call-in, and also maybe, more on our show this week.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is a weekly thing now, so what else is new?
I don't know. I think you're being modest.
Well,
I think this weekend's hit piece on you in The Guardian was big time. I think you entered a new level.
Maybe. It reminds me kind of, I don't know if you remember on the Colbert Report when he used to have that segment where it was like, who's not honoring me now, or something like that. And so I feel like now with us at the Gray Zone, it's like, who's smearing us now?
Right. Yeah, true that. True that. Yeah.
But yeah.
And
for those who missed it, The Guardian claimed that I am the leading purveyor of disinformation on Syria.
Yeah.
And they based this claim solely on a study that comes from something called the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, which The Guardian failed to mention is funded entirely by belligerents in the Syria dirty war, including the US, the UK, and various cutouts of these and other governments. And they also failed to identify a single piece of disinformation on Syria that I spread. So it's a very dubious piece, to say the least. And The Guardian failed to contact me to get my comment before publication. And they also failed to identify to their audience that their source here, the study, is funded entirely by governments that were belligerents in the dirty war in Syria.
Right. Also, how are we doing on our likes before we start? How are we doing? Wilson, what do we got? Wilson's emotional right now.
I'm seeing 182. It took me a minute to even unmute myself. I was so upset by it.
Yeah. 182, guys. I say we wait. I'm going to be like a teacher who waits until her students stop talking. 219. That's good.
Let's get 235. All right. I think we're about halfway now.
Well, all right. We're less than halfway, but I'm not. I'm more of a taskmaster than Aaron and Wilson. So in the name of democracy,
3/4 kind of person.
You guys. Oh yeah, I'm more of a 3/4 or actual half, but yeah, I understand because I smashed the like button like it was Russian disinformation. Amber Lee Griego says so. If you need that to encourage yourself, make sure you should definitely think that way. So should we should we just start with the clips?
The people are at the gates demanding
the barbarians are at the gate.
So let's give it to them.
Let's give it to them.
Monday morning on this Juneteenth holiday, and a happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. 50 years after the Watergate break-in, we learned this week a lot about another president, Donald Trump, and all of that president's men. We learned at the January 6 hearings that Mr. Trump was told repeatedly that he'd lost the election, but that he continued to insist he'd won. And he spread the lie that the election was rigged anyway. We learned.
Wow, what a huge revelation. You mean Donald Trump lost the election and then spread a crazy conspiracy theory that really he had been robbed in a sophisticated conspiracy against him involving Venezuelan and Chinese voting machines? Like, wow.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Thank God these January 6 hearings happened. This major development.
And we're only finding this out 18 months later after we've been talking about it nonstop for 18 months. Incredible.
They had to do a really deep dive into that.
Yeah.
And by the way, Aaron, make sure did you retweet this? Did you tweet this out?
Sorry, my bad.
No, it's okay.
Well, I'm just so enthralled by the Chuckster and these.
I know.
Revelations.
You were just catching up on the latest revelations. Yeah. So
what else has he got? Let's hear.
All right.
Learned that Mr. Trump was told repeatedly that the idea that Vice President Mike Pence could unilaterally overturn the election was illegal and unconstitutional, but that he continued to pressure Pence to do so anyway.
Can't believe.
And we learned that the people advising Mr. Trump likely believed their plot was illegal and unconstitutional, but they urged Mr. Trump to go ahead anyway. What is emerging from this past week's hearing is the image of a president who was more defiant than delusional, who tried to hang on to power not because he thought it was right, but simply because he thought he could. Finally, we've learned that January 6th was no one-day event.
Wait, guys, it's not because he thought he was right. It's because he thought that he could. This whole time I thought Trump had a really good constitution-based, process-based justification for doing what he did, but it turns out he's kind of an opportunist.
That's shocking.
Shocking.
Shocking news. Donald Trump's an opportunist?
Yeah.
Wow.
Finally, we've learned that January 6th was no one-day event, but the end result of weeks of planning and scheming by a president who could not and cannot admit that he lost the election and was rejected by the American electorate. And standing in the way of Mr. Trump's plan was Mr. Pence, who ended up withstanding enormous pressure to go along with the scheme.
So that is the Meet the Press summary of January 6 hearings. And we want to be fair and balanced. We know that we have a little bit of a penchant for Chuck Todd. We're cognizant of that fact. So we decided to give you Face the Nation's update summary of January 6th.
Katie, can I just say, this Mike Pence guy, I'm not too familiar with him, but he sounds really interesting.
He sounds almost heroic.
Yeah, and maybe we'll learn more about Mike Pence's heroism shortly.
Yeah. All right.
Again, with a crisis in our American democracy. The investigation into the January 6th attack and the elaborate scheming that led up to it. Lawmakers and witnesses are warning that the threat is not over. For more on what we learned and what's next in the hearings, here's CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane.
On this vote, an unprecedented pressure campaign against a sitting vice president ended with Mike Pence in an underground loading dock beneath the Capitol for 4 hours January 6th. He'd been rushed into safety from the U.S. Senate chamber, and at one point, insurgents were just 40 feet away.
A confidential informant from the Proud Boys told the FBI that the Proud Boys would have killed Mike Pence if given a chance.
That day, he refused to leave.
The vice president did not.
Whoa. The informant told the FBI that the Proud Boys would have killed Mike Pence if given the chance. That's crazy. First of all, why was there an informant with the Proud Boys, and why didn't they help stop the thing to begin with if they were informing and if there was an elaborate plot?
Right.
And second of all, is someone going to get charged now with trying to kill or plotting to kill Mike Pence?
Good question.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds me of? Snow. Informer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're gonna have to go to that song maybe for some wisdom.
Let's bring it back for January 6th.
Yeah.
I want to take any chance that the world would see the vice president of the United States fleeing the United States Capitol.
Earlier that day, the president personally pressured Pence one last time before the electoral vote. Witnesses say he called Pence a wimp. In a speech Friday, the former president denied it.
I never called Mike Pence a wimp. I never called him a wimp.
But again, asserted Pence could have stopped the official certification of the electoral votes.
I said, well, what is he, a robot? He's a human conveyor belt.
The committee argued the already violent mob was egged on further.
Not a wimp.
By Trump's
not a wimp, just a human conveyor belt.
I mean, I will say this. There's something pretty hilarious about Mike Pence, serving Donald Trump pretty loyally for his entire administration, pretending as if he believed in Trump's Make America Great Again, and pretending that Trump was some good Christian after all of his sins who had found God, giving Trump that, fundamentalist Christian imprimatur that Mike Pence represents. And then Trump turns around and completely trashes him and sells him out and encourages people to, confront Pence just because he wouldn't go along with his deranged conspiracy theories. I mean, there's something comical about that.
It is, yeah. Hold on, we got a nice super chat. 1 second. Chuckles,
the committee argued the already.
Chuckles talks so weird. He does so quiet and soft. Is he being dramatic? No way I could watch a whole show. Well, that's why we're here for you.
That's right.
Because we do watch the shows that so you don't have to. All right.
He's a human conveyor belt.
The committee argued the already violent mob was egged on further by Trump's mid-afternoon tweet that Pence lacked courage.
I'm telling you, if Pence caved, we're going to drag mother through the streets.
A series of White House lawyers and aides described an elaborate, weeks-long effort to strong-arm Pence into executing a scheme devised by California lawyer John Eastman to reject some of the electoral votes and steal the election. White House lawyers testified the president and Eastman both knew the plan was bogus and unlawful. A Trump White House aide described a call to Eastman.
I said, are you out of your effing mind?
By the way, I like the art behind Eastman. I like that abstract panda painting.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Pretty, right? It's edgy.
And then he's got a baseball bat that says justice on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then some weird, interesting things underneath it. This guy's, wow.
Yeah.
Snazzy.
Eastman.
I said, are you out of your effing mind? I said, you're going to cause riots in the streets.
The committee has 2 hearings planned for the week ahead, including one in which they're expected to argue that Donald Trump tried to interfere with local election officials, including in Georgia. And CBS News has learned the committee also has a team investigating the role played by far-right groups, including their efforts to plot and plan ahead of the attack. Margaret?
And they were all FBI informants.
Yeah. Did you know that he tried to interfere in Georgia? I had no idea.
Shocking news.
Shocking news. Yeah. Thank God we have Face the Nation to deliver that news. So we have a clip that this is the perfect follow-up, I think, to those clips, which is a question from Chuckster to Jamie Raskin, member of Congress, Jamie Raskin. Let's see what he asks. And watch Chuck's face. He thinks he's really smart and edgy. I can't believe I said that word twice, but edgy when he asks this question of Jamie Raskin.
I also want to hear your impressions of the way he asks it because it's so Chuck Todd.
Okay. Yeah, we'll try to bring that to you.
A hero. Well, in a time of...
Wait, hold on.
Mike Pence a hero? Well, in a...
Let me try to do that. Mike Pence a hero?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mike Pence a hero? Well, in a time of absolutely scandalous betrayal.
You know what Chuck Todd sounds like to me? Sounds like a kid searching for direction. He's a little confused, because he's been told that Mike Pence is on the wrong team.
Right.
But then Mike Pence just came in and did a truly heroic task by standing up to Trump, by not going along with Trump's mania. So now Chuck Todd is asking his dad, is Mike Pence a hero?
Right.
Dad, is Mike Pence a hero?
Or he's sorry, I cut you off.
Well, and let's see what the father says.
Okay, yeah.
On Father's Day.
Mike Pence a hero? Well, in a time of absolutely scandalous betrayal of people's oaths of office and crimes being committed all over the place, somebody who does their job and sticks to the law will stand out as a hero on that day. And I think on that day, he was a hero for resisting all of the pressure campaigns and the coercive efforts to get him to play along with this continuation of the big lie, this big joke.
Scott Johnson puts it great. He says, "Is Mike Pence my daddy?" That's really the question being asked here.
Right. Is Mike Pence my daddy? Yeah. Who's your daddy? Mike Pence. Yeah.
Lie. This big joke that he could somehow call off all the proceedings himself. I mean, it likely would have forced everything into the House of Representatives for a so-called contingent election, where the GOP knew that they had a majority of state delegations, because we vote in a 12th Amendment contingent election on the basis of one state, one vote, rather than one member, one vote.
So there you have it. He's a hero.
Oh, man. How long is this going to go on for?
I know.
I thought we were done with it when there was an impeachment hearing 18 months ago. The House convicted Trump. Everyone knew he was guilty. But then luckily he was gone. He's no longer president. But apparently we gotta keep him in the news.
Yeah.
And also, even though there's a parallel Justice Department investigation that will actually charge people if they're found to be responsible for criminal conduct. But that's not enough, apparently.
No, not enough. Yeah. All right, what do we got next?
It's a hero. Joining me now is a member of the January 6th Select Committee, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin.
Oh, yeah. So this is an earlier clip of Jamie Raskin. We played it out of order. But anyway, just watch how many times Jamie Raskin uses the word big here in this first answer, okay? He loves to use big in all sorts of forms.
Maryland, he, of course, was the lead impeachment manager during the second impeachment. Congressman Raskin, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Delighted to be with you.
Let me just start with what you believe were the most important takeaways for these two hearings this past week.
Donald Trump knew the big lie was a big lie. They used it also as a big shakedown and a ripoff of his supporters to keep money rolling in. You know, usually when a campaign's over and someone's lost, it's very difficult to raise money, but they raised more than $200 million based on that lie. Then there's what I'm calling the big joke, the idea that nobody had noticed that for more than 2 centuries, the vice president somehow has the unilateral power to decide who's going to be the next president. And
all right, so we have the big lie, then it goes the big lie again, then we have the big shakedown, then we have the big joke. Okay?
Yeah, we got 4. Yeah.
So what other bigs can Jamie Raskin throw in there? You know, Trump's a big guy, so we can call Trump the big guy.
He is a big guy, yeah.
Or like the big liar.
Yeah.
The big deal. I mean, this is a really, really big deal that all this is happening. Or this happened 18 months ago. We still have to talk about it nonstop, even though we're having a proxy war in Ukraine, a recession, all these other issues, gun massacres.
Right.
So a lot of big. Anyway, I just
you could talk about how much he loves the Big Lebowski.
The Big Lebowski. Yeah, he loves the Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
And
I like big butts also.
I like big butts, and I can't not big lie.
Right, you're right. I cannot big lie. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, look, what I find funny about the term big lie and how widely it's been adopted, if you look at how the media reports it, they're like, and the big lie that was said, it's true. I mean, it was a big lie that Trump was robbed of a victory. Fair enough. But Jamie Raskin, meanwhile, and his Democratic colleagues were pushing conspiracy theories for 4 years that Trump was a Russian asset. And no one dares call that one a big lie or even a lie, because they were all taking part in it. So it's just funny to see how everyone marches to the beat of one big lie, but when it comes to the big lies that they push themselves on Trump being a Russian agent, that's like that was actually legitimate and something worthy of investigation and worthy of the same kind of conspiracy theories that Trump was pushing about his election loss.
Right. That was a little lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't for them. It wasn't even a lie. It was.
You're right. Right. A big truth.
It was a big truth.
Yeah.
It was the big smoking gun that they never could actually find.
Right.
You know.
Are we playing more of this, or
that's enough? No, that's enough.
All right.
Yeah. Big clip.
All right. Big clip. Yeah. All right. What do we got next? Let's see. Oh, I see.
A number of economists. I want to put up a chart of inflation here for our audience.
So this guy is, his name is
Brian Deese.
Brian Deese, and he is the director of Biden's National Economic Council.
Yeah.
And when you work for the Biden administration, you're programmed pretty much to say one word all the time, and that is Putin. So we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
To see, measured by the Consumer Price Index. So
from the beginning again.
Economists, I want to put up a number of economists, I want to put up a chart of inflation here for our audience to see, measured by the Consumer Price Index. So from the beginning of the pandemic through now, and as you can see, the tick up began a good year before the war in Ukraine began. A number of economists, including at the San Francisco Fed, have said that the tremendous fiscal spending that went underway, the $6 trillion in 2 years, did add to that, including, as you can see right on there, the $2 trillion that the Biden administration pushed through in the spring of 2021. So when people look at that and they say, well, the White House told us that inflation would be transitory. The White House told us we could go through with this kind of spending and we'd be fine, even when Democrats within your own party were warning this would add to inflation. How do you win credibility here to the public and say this time we're not wrong?
Well, you just have to look around the world today to recognize that the two principal drivers of inflation are the pandemic and Putin.
Nailed it.
Boom.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. What a soundbite.
What a soundbite.
That's all you have to do.
Pandemic and Putin.
That's all you have to do when you're in the Biden White House. You know, talk about the pandemic and talk about Putin. You know, and by the way, remember Biden said something like, "We're gonna shut down the pandemic, but not the economy."
Shut down the pandemic, but not the economy.
You know,
yeah.
that was his campaign tagline.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that's faring so well so far, and that's why they got to pivot to blaming everything on Putin.
Right.
Putin
they got to shut down Putin instead.
Yeah.
Well, they got to try.
I think next they're going to be calling it Putin's big price hike. I think that's the next
line. Oh yeah.
Because Putin's price hike isn't really catching fire. So maybe if
Right.
Jamie Raskin can get involved, they can call Putin's big price hike.
What about little Putin's big price hike?
That's good.
That's good.
That's
right?
really good. I like that.
Yeah, that'll make them squirm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then you're twisting the knife into Putin, which they love to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because he's the cause of all evil.
Right.
And they're also blaming him too. So that's perfect.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Okay, now we got some more. Yeah, we got some more. This guy's Aaron's favorite.
Oh no.
Schiff.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Hearing will include evidence about Trump electors in battleground states who submitted fake electoral college ballots, even though Trump lost these states that we're talking about. We have already heard that Trump campaign officials were involved in that. Do you have evidence that the former president himself was involved?
Yes, we'll show evidence of the president's involvement in this scheme. We'll also, again, show evidence about what his own lawyers came to think about this scheme. And we'll show courageous state officials who stood up and said they wouldn't go along with this plan to either call legislatures back into session or decertify the results for Joe Biden. The system held because a lot of state and local elections officials upheld their oath to their Constitution. A lot of them Republicans as well as Democrats.
Just to be clear, you said you have evidence that the then president was involved in putting a fake slate of electors out there. Do you have evidence that he directed it?
You know, I don't want to get ahead of our hearing. We'll show during our hearing what the president's role was in trying to get states to name alternate slates of electors, how that scheme depended initially on hopes that the legislatures would reconvene and bless it.
Will we see that he directed it?
They didn't, and they pressed forward with it anyway.
Will we see that he directed it?
I don't want to get ahead of what we'll show you during the hearing, but we will show you what we know about his role in this.
Wow, Katie. So this is Adam Schiff, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, also a member of the January 6th committee, teasing that he has some damning evidence about Trump that we haven't seen yet that is going to further implicate Trump in the January 6th conspiracy. The weird thing is, though, I feel that I've heard something similar from Adam Schiff before. I can't quite pinpoint what it is, but maybe back, I don't know, 5 years ago in March 2017, he might have said something similar. Let's take a look at what he said back in March 2017 about having some secret damning evidence that he's not going to talk about yet.
What you have right now is a circumstantial case.
Actually, no, Chuck. I can tell you that the case is more than that, and I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now. So, again, I think...
So you have seen direct evidence of collusion?
I don't want to go into specifics, but I will say that there is evidence that is not circumstantial.
So there we go.
So his two go-tos are, I don't want to get ahead of it, and I don't want to get into specifics.
Yeah, but I've seen something. Trust me. Yeah. I've seen it.
He's kind of like a prophet. I've seen it.
Adam Schiff, the prophet. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He's definitely a prophet. Yeah. He's a prophet in a cult called Blue Anon, which believed for a long time that Trump was a Russian asset and conspirator. And comments like that fueled it. So I'm just saying is, for people who are looking for something huge about Trump we don't already know when it comes to January 6th, if Adam Schiff is the one promising it, I just hope you are tempering your expectations, given his record.
Yeah. All right. Oh, God. You guys are going to be really happy with what we have next for you, I believe, right? Next is our... Yeah. All right. You guys always say, give me Stelter. So we're going to give you some Stelter.
More of former President Trump's lies about the 2020 election will be on full display on Capitol Hill this week. There will be more hearings by the January 6th committee, more presentations of multimedia clips during the public hearings. YouTube removed one of those videos from the platform this week because the presentation included a clip of one of Trump's lies about 2020. The New York Times captured this screenshot with the video that says, this video is private. You can't watch it on YouTube. So why? That's because the platform owned by Google Alphabet shifted its election misinfo policy a month after the 2020 election. YouTube announced a blanket ban on content that includes lies about the election without, quote, proper context, regardless of who creates it. Is that the right policy? Let's bring in Robbie Suave, senior editor at Reason Magazine, the Libertarian Bible. He also hosts a YouTube show for The Hill that was suspended in March under the same policy. Robbie, so this policy, can you explain it to viewers? Because I think it's quite confusing.
It is quite confusing. I think people don't fully understand what YouTube's policy is that if you're showing the claim that Trump's made, the false claims he's made about the election, unless you immediately in that same video correct it or you have a disclaimer in it, then they're counting that whole video as spreading misinformation, even if it's clear that, you know, it's not you, the producer of the video, saying that. You're simply calling attention to it, which is obviously a legitimate function of journalism, of this committee. Yeah, the same thing happened to my YouTube show, Rising. We played a clip of Trump. It's a news show saying that he said this. It was clear we did not endorse that claim. My viewers know I don't endorse that claim. I've rejected that claim on any number of occasions, but because I didn't immediately do so in the video, they counted that as spreading misinformation. Spreading awareness of misinformation is not the same thing as spreading misinformation itself. And YouTube, I think, should figure that out. It's really lunacy that they haven't.
Here's the company's statement. Let's put it on screen. Our election integrity policy prohibits content advancing false claims that widespread fraud, errors, or glitches change the outcome of the election. If it does not provide sufficient context, we enforce our policies equally for everyone, and that's why we've removed the video from the committee. Gosh, I really think this has been eye-opening, though. It was eye-opening when it happened to you at the Hill. It's eye-opening for the committee. I think this makes people think twice about their relationship to these big tech platforms.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but I think the efforts to absolutely moderate it in all cases can go overboard, and this is a good case of that. What if Trump was speaking and it was just being covered live by some outlet on YouTube? What about C-SPAN? Is YouTube going to take the position that every claim has to be vetted in real time? Right now, they're only saying it's election misinformation and then some specific COVID claims. But as we know, Brian, some claims about efficacies of certain,
we can't control it. Yeah.
Robbie really, I think, undersells the case here. He says moderating misinformation can sometimes go overboard. I think I'm correctly paraphrasing him there. No, there's nothing. I mean, the moment you're policing speech, you're overboard, period. There's no instances in which policing some misinformation is fine. I mean, if you're policing speech that promotes violence, absolutely, or promotes, bigotry, okay. But if you're trying to adjudicate what political statements are true and false, then you're just engaging in outright censorship. And YouTube has no business doing that. And, that's why, even though Brian Stelter and CNN and MSNBC pushed misinformation about a Trump-Russia conspiracy for, 4 years, I would never advocate that they be removed. They have the right to say that. And likewise, Trump, with all his own deranged conspiracy theories, has the right to spread his misinformation about January 6th. I just think either you believe in free speech or you don't. And certainly, no one can claim that this policy is consistent because it has not been applied consistently. The mainstream conspiracy theory that Trump was a Russian asset, that was fine for 4 years. This conspiracy theory about Trump losing the election unfairly, that was not allowed. But, if you believe in standards, then you have to enforce it equally. And that's why it just shouldn't be enforced. So I think he's underselling the danger of it. And by the way, Katie, you were on Robbie's show, Rising, last week, doing a great job talking about another case of YouTube censorship where Max Blumenthal and I did this discussion about leaked emails showing a attempted harassment censorship campaign against the Gray Zone, and we got censored by YouTube. It was taken down entirely. And you went on Robbie's show and talked about it. And of course, that's something Brian Stelter would never ever discuss on his show. But I hope he follows Robbie's lead and has you on to talk about that.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it, Brian. But we of course talked about that on this week's Useful Idiots, which I hope you all watched because it was great. But that's why I wanted to show this clip. Let's just play the end of it and then I'll respond to it.
What the vaccines do, what masks work, like that, the knowledge of that changes over time. Different recommendations come out. So the idea that they would have some blatant ban in any one circumstance on just those subjects, it seems very weird to me. I think it might give people the idea that like everything on YouTube is being vetted, because if that wasn't true, they would take it down, and that would be even more confusing to people.
So what I thought was interesting about this is that they're upset when YouTube's policy gets in the way of their streaming January 6th. But because that's like a way to really drive it home, the dangers of this. They don't really care when it's removing stuff like you and Max talking about Masongate.
Yes.
Or they don't care about who is making up, who's determining what's fake news or real news. It's just that when it gets in the way of their Jan 6 porn, that's when they get upset.
Yes.
And that is something that I think one of the most dangerous parts of this pseudo like war on disinformation. It's not just that things get removed, but it's the implication is that the stuff that's up there has been vetted, which Robbie actually pointed out. But I've always thought that was one of the worst side effects of it. How are we with the likes, by the way? I'm not above asking that question.
We got 700, which is almost 1,200 fewer.
Guys,
than what we got
if you haven't already liked the stream, give it a thumbs up. Let's see if we can grow a little bit. Smash that like that smash.
I think one word of advice that might motivate people would be
the hero.
If that might help.
Is Mike Pence a hero?
Mike Pence a hero.
Yeah, you're right. Remember, we bring you those good nuggets, those good gems. Yeah.
And by the way, don't just give it a like, give it the big like.
Yeah, give it the big like. Yeah.
That's what your like is. It's not just a like, it's a big like. So take part in the big like.
Yeah.
And smash that like button.
Smash that like, yeah. Smash. Also, I know, Aaron, you don't like when we read the haters, and what I do on my show, the Katie Halper Show, is I like to read the haters when they pay. But I do want to raise something that someone said, if that's okay. Do I have permission? Someone wrote, I told you Aaron Maté likes Trump. No discussion or no debate or something. Because this person thinks that they totally nailed you. And
with what?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Yeah. In fact, if you could put that, I invite you to comment on your evidence. Because what is the deal with people who like to smear you without evidence? I think they just think when they say it with enough confidence.
Well, I mean, look, in this comment in this commentator's defense, it's hard to, I think, fit an argument into a YouTube comment.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
It's hard. You can't use footnotes and things like that. So, fair enough. But I miss what his point was. What's he saying about me?
That you like Trump.
I like Trump. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, what I don't like are deranged conspiracy theories that inflame tensions between the world's top nuclear powers and distract the country from fundamental issues that are leading to chaos at home around the world. And that's why I didn't like Russiagate. So I did not like the idea that Trump was a Russian asset, also because there was no evidence for it. And all the evidence showed the opposite. So I am guilty of that. And I also didn't like the Trump-Russia conspiracy theories because it was distracting. And this is a point I kept making, but it wasn't really... people missed this part, I think, or people who didn't want to hear it missed it. It was distracting from all the awful things that Trump actually did.
Right.
So, there were bigger protests to save Jeff Sessions' job than there were to protest Trump's tax heist, where he gave a lot of money to the wealthy via his tax cuts, or pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, or the Paris Climate Accords, or many other horrible things that Trump did. That was one of many reasons why I didn't like the Trump-Russia conspiracy theory. And for that, some people accused me of liking Trump. All right.
Who I believe you said should be indicted.
I thought what Trump did on January 6th was impeachable. Yes. I mean, that was crazy.
Right.
Crazy.
I can't believe, which is Aaron likes to neg the people he loves. So that's why he wants him to be impeached. Yeah.
Yeah. Tough love. It's tough love.
Tough love. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, if I have to still answer that, then
I know
people just aren't paying attention to what I've actually said.
I just thought it was cute. It was like, I like that there was no, again, I like the big confidence of the big people who say you're a big Trump supporter. No evidence required.
That's definitely, yeah.
All right. Well, guys, get ready. We have more Stelter for you.
The January 6th hearings. The hearings are not just about the past. They are about the present and the future. The creation of a historical record is important, but it may be the least important aspect. Heading off the next coup attempt may matter a lot more. We are seeing specific threats to democracy, to the right to vote. In places like New Mexico, we're seeing conspiracy theories erupt into screams in one county, quote, after false fraud claims through primary certification into question. These stories are keeping reporters busy the same way rot and mold keeps contractors busy. And some newsrooms are taking a stand.
Very poetic.
Joe Kahn, who became executive editor of the New York Times this week, told NPR's David Folkenflik, you can't have independent journalism in a non-free society. And we are not impartial about whether or not this nation becomes a non-free society. And this week, the Associated Press named Tom Verdin to a new job, democracy editor. So back with Julie Pace here, top editor of the AP. Julie, I've never heard of a democracy news editor before. What's this about?
So this is a really new but also very crucial beat that we are covering at the AP. This is threats to democracy. Yes, in the United States, we'll also be looking at this globally because while this is certainly an issue here at home, this is an issue in a lot of countries around the world. But one of the reasons that I'm particularly excited.
What are the odds this democracy beat and Brian Stelter, who cares so much about the future and democracy, are going to cover their own government's efforts to overthrow democracies around the world and install their own governments, like the ongoing coup in Venezuela, the ongoing attempt, like the fact that Biden just refused to also invite the government of Nicaragua and Cuba to the Summit of the Americas because the U.S. is trying to install client regimes there. Is that going to make the democracy beat, or are they going to miss that one?
I seriously doubt it. That's a good question. I'd love to be proven wrong. What about misinformation spread by their own network?
Yeah, I think they're going to miss that one.
Yeah. But we're going to give them a chance.
Excited that Tom Verdin, as you mentioned, has been named to our democracy editor, is that Tom's background comes in leading state house coverage at the AP in all 50 states. And I think the challenge that a lot of news organizations are facing when it comes to covering democracy is that, yes, this is, of course, a national issue. It is a macro issue, but it's playing out all across the country in very local ways. And you saw a great example of that in New Mexico, as you pointed out, where you had a rural county with a 3-person commission that decided to hold off on certifying election results basically just because they didn't want to certify them. There was no evidence there. And so we have to really get down into the weeds of this at the state and local level, because that's where so many of these decisions are going to be made. And if you think about what happened in New Mexico potentially playing out across the country in November in the midterm elections or in a general election in 2024, I think it certainly could provide enough fodder to keep a democracy editor and a democracy team quite busy.
Yes, indeed. Danielle, you said to me in an email, this is something the newsrooms have to keep ringing the alarm about. What exactly is the alarm?
The alarm is that we have an extremist wing, an extremist element within the conservative movement that is trying to basically take over the Republican Party. Like, this is happening in Idaho already. Chris Mathias, one of our reporters here at HuffPost, has chronicled in depth what has been going on in Idaho, where you have outsiders coming into the state to try to influence local elections, to try to elect more extremist people with more extremist views, and just recently you had 31 white nationalists who were arrested with intent to riot at a Pride event. And that's what we're up against. We're up against a small minority of people.
When you say we're up against, who's we?
The press.
The American people?
The American people, all of us.
Huh.
Anyone who is pro-democracy, pro-free press, pro-equality, like, this is what we're up against, because these are the things these people do not want. They don't want to see a free and equitable society. They don't want to see a place where someone like me is leading a newsroom at HuffPost. They don't want to see women in positions of power or people of color in positions of power, or to see gay people and trans people live freely and openly. Like, that's what we are up against. If you are for freedom, if you are for equality, you have to take a stance. And that's why it's so important for the press to keep banging the drum. This is not the time to be shy. Okay. This is not the time to demur away from something. This is not the time to just both sides something to death. There is no both sides to whether or not you're pro-democracy and pro-free press.
We should report the truth. And let me show this headline at the same
Let's
time.
pause
Here's
for a
some
second.
truth.
Pause.
I mean, look, there's obvious truth to what she's saying. There are white supremacists. There are people who want to prevent people like her from heading newsrooms, a Black woman from being the editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post. Absolutely, yes. But that's not the only threat to democracy. And part of what these people are doing, especially Brian Stelter, this is his job, is to enforce this myth that democracy just means that people have the right to select from two different factions of the ruling elite every single 4 years. That's what that's their only definition of democracy. Democracy in reality should mean that people have an actual control over the decisions that impact their lives. And no one in corporate media cares about that, because they serve the parties that are owned by the same people that own the media.
Right.
And they don't want to increase democracy that way, to give people more of a say in public policy and to give people policies that most people support, like Medicare for all. They don't care about that. And on the issue of a free press, they don't care about Julian Assange.
Right, I know.
He's being tortured right now. So it's like it works so well for them that they have these crazies on the far right to hold up as the only enemies of democracy,
right,
when they themselves partake in attacking democracy as well. That's why the system works so beautifully for them, because there's always going to be someone who is more extreme and crazy than they are that they can point to and pretend that those are the only threats.
Yeah, it's such low-hanging fruit. Like, wow, great. I'm glad you condemn racism, homophobia, transphobia. But what are you doing of substance? What do you mean this is what we're up against? What does that mean? And somehow it creates the idea that they're the victims, so they don't actually have to do their job, which is looking at speaking truth to power or taking on the powerful. And it is such a joke that anyone who pretends to care about a free press doesn't focus on Julian Assange.
Yeah. I
mean, it's just like, lest you had any doubts about where these people's priorities were. And it really is. It's like the weaponization. We see this so many times, but it's the weapon. This is another example of the weaponization of identity politics. Like, we're going to distract people by condemning things that are bad. I'm glad, again, that's good. We should condemn that. I don't know how that relates to having a democracy beat necessarily, but it's just a way to distract from actually, what about reporting on the way that things are harming poor people or working people? What about reporting on inflation in a way that looks at the way capital is taking advantage of this crisis? And of course, if you understand the way race and gender work, you'd get that the people who are, with minimum wage, for instance, the people who are make up minimum wage earners are people of color and women, but it can never be that way. It always has to be the treatment of one woman in a newsroom, like one really powerful person. Like we have to be worried about how this woman is seen. I mean, yeah, of course, but that's not where the emphasis should be. It's in like how this plays out among elites. And I don't really, that's not where we need to be. That's not really where we need to be focusing. Such narcissism.
And I'm going to assume, and I will apologize if I'm wrong, but I'm going to assume that Brian Stelter didn't even mention Julian Assange on his show this week. I didn't watch the whole thing. Maybe I missed it, but I'm going to assume based on his track record so far that Brian Stelter, living in a country whose government is trying to extradite a publisher for publishing factual information that included exposing major war crimes and corruption. I'm going to assume that Brian Stelter didn't even mention that on a show this week. And that speaks to how much these people really care about democracy and a free press. It's they're enforcing an attack on democracy, even while sometimes paying lip service to protecting it.
What's interesting is that I just Googled Brian Stelter, Julian Assange. He actually had him on Reliable Sources in 2016, which actually just makes their silence about him all the more inexcusable.
Yeah.
This is someone he interviewed. You don't think it's worthy following up on his treatment and the fact that he's going to be extradited and the fact that doctors have said this is a terrible thing to do?
Yeah.
A Fox News poll that says more Republicans. So here's the headline. It says Republicans are more likely to preserve democracy than Democrats. So if you ask the American people who's more likely to save democracy, you're going to get Republicans over Democrats by like by about 1%. But the point, John Harwood, is there's a divide on that question as well. So all the talk about democracy and extremism in the Republican Party, a lot of people don't see it that way at all.
Well, sure. And people answering that question may interpret the support of democracy as meaning that their side wins. But I think, as Danielle indicated, we've got to make sure as reporters that we have the right language for this moment. The traditional way that we cover political disputes in Congress, for example, is Democrats on one side, Republicans on the other. The spectrum is liberal to conservative, and we should not take sides on liberal versus conservative. However, this situation, the Trump era more generally, but this particular situation, that's not the spectrum. The spectrum is truth on the one side and lies on the other side. And a large chunk of the Republican Party has chosen to...
Remember when Bush, we had truthful Republicans like Bush who were talking about WMDs? I miss those days of when Republicans and Democrats didn't lie.
Yeah. They spoke their truth.
Yeah, right. That was their truth, right? They were just speaking their truth. That they weren't lying. That was Bush speaking his truth. Yeah. And who are we to silence him and erase him? Okay. That is another dangerous tendency, again, which the idea that, Liz Cheney, she's a truth teller because she doesn't like Trump. It's different this time, as Bill Fenner says. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's why, I'm sorry to repeat myself if you heard me say this, but I really think these January 6 hearings are just basically a kickoff show for Liz Cheney's eventual Democratic nomination, whether it's president, vice president, or some post. I mean, that's where we're headed.
Right. With Rob Reich apparently wrote something.
He did. Rob Reich, says really a lot of great things on domestic policy, critic of the oligarchs, but he wrote an article about how Liz Cheney is a hero and could make a good candidate for the Democratic Party.
You don't have to hand it to Liz Cheney. You also don't have to call Mike Pence a hero. Yeah. All right, let's keep watching the end of this.
Situate itself on the lying end of that spectrum. Donald Trump has, of course, been there for a long time, but many Republicans are now echoing his lies.
Pause for 1 second.
And when we see what the January 6th...
By the way, given that Mike Pence covered for Trump for 4 years and kissed his feet, kissed the ring, I have no doubt that if actually Trump somehow had the prospect of carrying out a successful coup, I'm confident that Mike Pence would have gone along with it. I just think Mike Pence in this case realized how insane the whole thing was and how just to do a coup, you have to have the military on your side. You can't just have a bunch of riled up MAGA supporters at the Capitol. You have to have a lot has to happen for a coup to succeed. And I don't think Mike Pence is that principled where he wouldn't have gone along with something if it could actually have worked. I think he recognized that what Trump was doing was not only crazy, but also no chance of succeeding because he didn't have any actual weight on his side.
Right. Yeah. Someone wrote in the comments before and I missed it. I meant to highlight it. Something about how if Pence is such a good guy, why didn't he warn people? Why didn't he speak out against this? Which is true. Yeah. Where was Pence denouncing this? Why hasn't he since denounced it? Because he's a wimp. He's a human conveyor belt and a wimp. That's what Jamie Raskin should have said when he asked if he was a hero. He said, well, more of a human conveyor belt.
More like the big belt.
The big belt, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep playing.
This committee is laying out, not partisan in the slightest, Republican witnesses, Republican questioners, Republican members like Liz Cheney leading the divide. We can't shrink from identifying who's on the truth side and who's on the lying side. That is a choice that many Republicans have made, and we in the press are not indifferent to that. We should take sides in that. We are for the truth, and we've got to say so.
Julie Pace, last word to you.
I agree that we absolutely need to be advocates for the truth, for facts. I do think as a challenge to all of my colleagues in the media, one of the things we need to keep trying to do is explain what the truth is, to do it in language that people can understand, to do it in ways that help try to break through some of these.
Oh, I can't wait to be explained what the truth is. That sounds so exciting.
Yeah.
Sign me up for that one. Is there a course I can take?
Right.
Where the corporate outlets that like parrot every single government lie, Iraq WMDs, whatever it is, can now explain to me what the concept of truth is? Because we didn't do that enough. And if you went to college, you didn't do that enough there. We need a new course from professional disinformation agents in the media to tell us what the truth is. That sounds really exciting.
They're media splaining.
Yeah.
Okay, let's play the rest of that.
Bubbles that people live in. I think that that's a pursuit that is really noble, and I hope that we all continue to do it.
Julie Pace, Danielle Belton, and John Harwood, thank you all for the conversation.
God, that's tough. That is tough stuff to sit through. Yeah. Man, oh man. Well, we did it.
We did it. Guys, we did it. Yeah. We have one more. We have one more clip if we want to watch it about where Dana Bash is pressing someone. This is a good one.
Biden will visit Saudi Arabia next month to talk about this. On Friday, he said, quote, "I'm not going to meet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. I'm going to an international meeting and he's going to be part of it." Can you clarify this? Is he going to meet with the Saudi Crown Prince to talk about oil prices or not?
Well, he's going for the purpose of this international conference, but I know that he will. I think he will meet with the Saudi Crown Prince. He has asked for all suppliers around the globe to increase production. That includes OPEC, that includes our domestic oil and gas producers. He is asking for an increase like other leaders around the globe are increasing.
So they will have a one-on-one meeting?
That's my understanding that he will be meeting, but there's a series of meetings around energy overall. The Saudis are very interested, for example, in developing an expertise around hydrogen, clean hydrogen production. So I think there's a series of topics related to energy on the table.
Can you explain why, to the American people, why it is appropriate for a U.S. president to meet with a dictator who murdered and chopped up a journalist, to do that when it comes to human rights, given what he has said before about it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the president is a strong believer in human rights and has condemned Saudi Arabia.
Just to be clear, he didn't actually do the murder, he ordered it.
Of course, but I totally understand that. And the president is very concerned about that, and I'm sure we'll raise that issue. But he's also very concerned about what people are experiencing at the pump, and Saudi Arabia is head of OPEC. And we need to have increased production so that everyday citizens in America will not be feeling this pain that they're feeling right now. So all around the world, he is asking for people to increase production, but especially our own oil and gas producers. And to their credit, in some ways, some of them have decided that they are going to increase production, but it's still not enough. And that's why we're asking for this additional meeting this week.
So funny. First of all, so Biden, after getting heat for going to Saudi Arabia and kissing the ring, groveling at the feet of MBS after he promised to treat him like a pariah on the campaign trail, his response was, as Dana Bash said, was, "Oh, I'm not going to meet with MBS. I'm going to a meeting. Okay,
Right.
I'm going to a meeting.
He's going to be there.
All right, we're going to be in the same place, but we're not actually meeting." And like,
right. But
yes,
I may actually have to talk to him.
Yeah, but if we happen to run into each other at the meeting, I guess, yeah, I'll get on my hands and knees and beg him to send us the oil because I've screwed up big time with the proxy war in Ukraine. And also, I tried to continue Trump's coup in Venezuela, which means that I've cut off Venezuelan oil too. So I really need the Saudi dictatorship's oil. But I'm not actually going for that reason. I'm just, I'm going for another meeting on another topic. And if it happens to come up, then then we'll talk.
Right. To be fair, maybe he does have sympathy for leaders who help kill journalists because that's what he's doing with Assange.
That's exactly right.
So maybe that's what they can talk about. They can compare strategies.
That's exactly right.
Biden's going to be like, the problem is you were too violent about it. You got to do it legally. You got to do it through legal means. That's how you got to kill journalists.
Yeah. So you used a wood chipper, right? Like, you can't really consider using something called the legal system. It's a lot more efficient. It takes a lot longer.
Yeah. It does take a lot
longer. But the
longer.
result is pretty similar.
Right. So maybe that's what they'll talk about.
Yes, I think that's a fair bet.
Yeah, it's a fair bet. Well, guys, and someone pointed out in the speaking of explaining the truth, someone actually Amate was saying Amate pointed out in the comments. I missed it. I meant to highlight it that Hasbara means literally explaining, and Hasbara is basically Israeli propaganda. So meant to say that earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to leave you on that Hebrew lesson. All right, so guys, we're going to be at call-in. So see you at 11 a.m. EST. See you at call-in, and thanks again so much for joining. And make sure that you like this stream if you haven't, or else you let the Pod Save America boys win, and you also let the corporate overlords win. And also make sure that you subscribe to usefulidiots.substack.com. Okay. See you guys soon at call-in. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
It's a hero.